Tenna, you're not you when you're hungry. Eat a Snickers.
Mr. Antenna's TV Show.
When I built the TV world from Deltarune in Minecraft, I admit there wasn't much polish to it at first. I blame this on trying to get it out by Christmas and other issues balancing the project with other things I wanted to do, but the main thing missing was the boards. These boards make up the bulk of the gameplay part of the chapter and act as a sort of game within a game part. And that approach made me quite unsure on how to, well, do this part in Minecraft. So I dropped it for the Christmas release. But today I want to come back to that. I'm going to build the Legend of Tenna, or the Deltarune Chapter 3 boards, whichever gets me more engagement, in Minecraft, to the best of my ability, because I still had some uncertainty on my method here, so let me give you an idea of what the plan is. So in the last video, when admitting that I left the boards as a blind spot, I'd made these small game rooms on the lower floors of the studio. These are meant to replicate the main game rooms for each board next to the main studio, but after a while I realised how I could do more with it. Build the boards in the overworld. My rationale here is that since I'm translating a lot of Undertale and Deltarune areas into a more open world context, then doing so with the Legend of Tenna would be just as seamless. After all, the games are inspired by Zelda, which has a solid enough open world of its own. That's already been translated to Minecraft, so it would be no different from that. Plus, I wanted to use the overworld a lot more since the world currently has like 6 dimensions, which has bloated the world size to over half GB. Not proud of that, but it is what it is. So with that planned out, let's just go straight onto the desert board, because I don't see anything else we need to talk about here. When it came to picking a location for this first one, I knew I could keep things familiar since I already covered the desert in Chapter 2, although it meant I couldn't base the entire map off the desert, so I opted to locate the main board on top of a mountain nearby the reference area and build it out of the mesa and savanna hybrid of the area, but still leaving the desert stuff intact. This also gave me an opportunity to add this little camp area where the shops and the option to return to the TV world is located in a tent with some of the shops around it. You may be asking, Harold, why isn't that a dark fountain? Well, in case it wasn't obvious already, these boards are going to have a more meta adventure map vibe to them than the main map, considering that's the one thing I've been trying not to make the main map when all the stuff here is in spirit of TV time. I even had some experience forcing my brother to build adventure maps with me when I was like 10 or 11 on the PS3. You know, if you like and subscribe, I might make the canon event that is the Browsing My Old Worlds video. You know what, if we're going to be meta, we might as well make the music a lot more open world based. Let's see if anyone can guess this music without reading the credits. So onto the bulk of the build now, and the center temple was built out of a fountain as I hadn't covered that in Chapter 2 and thought it would fit here as the end point of the board. Then I started jumping around the map aimlessly, trying to figure out where to put all the key parts of the board, based on a reference I had to decide on my new Surface device taken from the game's wiki. My first impulse was to make the Sphinx Tenna that was on the side of the starting area, so following the Oasis I attempted to put together a decent model to the best of my ability. I mean, if the rest of it sucks, you can admit at least I got the nose right. This nestled in quite well below the camp where I hid the key in the mountain cave to the side, and if you're wondering about the lights here, I initially wanted to give this a TV set style, before deciding to go all in on the meta text. The build so far was taking a good enough shape, but I knew I needed to apply some more of the game's main areas, so I proceeded to speedrun a bunch of them. A lot of terraforming was done here to get a better shape for the overall map that I could work with. On the shelf down here was the Oasis Reservoir where you could dig up one of the keys of Lancer. It kinda counted as the small empty space next to it as well, since there isn't anything of note around there. This slope down the bigger Oasis also allowed me to tick off some open areas before getting to the more functional parts. The first block puzzle went on the other end of the stream, then the slope from there basically accounted for the rest of that row, though substituting the croissant for a cake, because the cake just naturally gives you power. Then, at the bottom of that slope, I put in those small pyramids at the bottom of the map, since the 2 rooms above it were just cacti and therefore very expendable. Down in the corner was the bridge past the stream to the grassy part, and I think in the distance I made a few more of the upper ones. Mainly the part where you find Lancer, which loops back around to the main camp using the openness of the map to my advantage. But I know you're probably asking at this point, that can't be it, you could have easily tagged this onto the last video. Well, you might also say that I'm missing something from the game, the original boards. When getting the S rank, Chris can go into the back to play the original version of the boards, which are altered quite a bit and leads up to the Roaring Knight super boss at the end of the chapter. These features are going to be merged into my version of the boards right now. Since the sword room was in the same place as the unused mail room in the original map, I decided to merge the two together in an underground crypt similar to the fountain. It started as a diamond sword, but I later switched it out to gold because when I got to doing the exit under the fountain, I thought it would be cool to have each board have an accent mineral to it that you collect at the end, the deserts being gold. It gives the boards a sort of CTM vibe to it, like old Minecraft maps. Does anyone remember Diversity? I used to force my brother to build that one with me all the time in Console Edition. I guess that was out of envy for Java users. The other notable part of the original board was the icy area where you get the key for the next one. I had an idea for this. On the cliff edge, where I added the second box puzzle near to that part, I lit up a small cave system and led it down to a cave of my own making. I covered it in ice, similar to Snowden from my Undertale world, and that contained a lit up area which contained the key inside. You could then teleport straight back to the TV world from then for convenience. And that's the desert board, or the Mesa Savannah Mountain board. I definitely should go a bit more faithful for the next one, but I'm proud of what I was able to do here. Now moving on, the land for the next one would be less chosen from where I've been before, and more so what would fit. And what better fit would I get than an island just the side of an ocean monument? Apologies to the person who suggested I use the ocean monument for the Dark Sanctuary, I thought it would fit better here. Yes, through the power of chunk base which I've been using throughout the project, I was able to find a small island near an ocean monument which, after plotting out where the bridge would be, I raised from its position and cleansed up extensively. If you're expecting a more thorough transformation, like I did with the Desert Temple in the cyber world, that's for later, but I'm keeping it vanilla in the context of the board at the moment. Once I got the base temple into a more polished state, I cloned it to the end of the bridge and saved the original for later. The pathways going down from there were a lot wider than for the desert, or quote-unquote desert, board, as I had a lot more space to work with. As for some of the sub-areas, I contained them in little bamboo huts that I felt went with the aesthetic a bit more, especially with the photography stuff and the adventure map vibe I was going for. This entire beach area was mainly purposed to contain the less interesting parts. I mean, I know there's enemies and stuff in the game, but that's not the intention to integrate them in here. But moving to the deeper parts, this was when I brought in more of Minecraft's aquatic structures. The cold ruins were a great way to connect the underground parts via tunnels. This first tunnel was meant to be the bomb room that connects the front and back ends of the map, separated here by a small jungle. I tried to make the wider connecting cave more sandy to be a bit more faithful to the original, but other than that it's mostly there just to link the two together in an interesting way. Then I continued to this back end, computer science has consumed my brain, where most of the interesting parts were raft puzzles, so that gave me the opportunity to just focus on the vibes of this half the island. You may have noticed that I've been designing a few palm trees throughout the build, which, using Axiom, I was able to scatter around the island like they were just normal trees. I don't think I've done custom trees in bulk before in my building, so it was interesting to experiment with here. The hut on this side contains the blue ribbon, nothing groundbreaking, except I made it one of those happy gas harnesses because I thought they would just be cool. I sped through a few smaller parts. Next, this corner here is where you buy Lancer, nothing too different. Then I made a few more huts for the sub areas and shops. I think this one on screen here is the one where you get the key and the TV dinner. And then going into the jungle, I placed the camera roadblock, that's what this frame is here, I think it looks nice. Then made the Greater Raft puzzle. I think I just rolled a bunch of them into one big lake parkour section, connecting background to the other side of the island. That's pretty much a lot of the major parts of the board tackled at this point. I mean, there was a few more loose ends that I dotted around like this hut right here, but apart from that, I was able to move towards the endgame parts of the map, including the shutter area, which TPs the player to an opposite island. That gives the player the key to Atlantis, because romance is not a power I could use in this map. But also, on the other end, you get the key to the Ice Palace, or rather the lodestone compass that points you towards it, because otherwise you wouldn't know where it was. Overall, the island board was definitely my favourite board to work on. Like, going through the final look of the area, this is probably the biggest vibe you'll get from this video. However, as for the original board, as you'll already know, traversing northwards with the key from the last board brings you to that Ice Palace, and considering we have a lodestone compass and an ice spikes biome north of the island, this was where I was going to transform the ocean monument to become the Ice Palace. It started with a few mask replacements, but over time I decided to restructure the whole thing and just cover it in ice. It was kinda irritating, to tell you the truth. I don't like ice builds. They really get on my nerves because of how you have to control the lighting, but since I was aiming to replicate the ice spikes, most of it was made out of packed ice and lit up with soul lanterns which don't melt regular ice. I also replaced most of the prismarine with glazed terracotta, which looked like the closest thing to Terraria's ice bricks that could work for this build. The arches remained prismarine, not just because I wanted something to still resemble the monument, but it helped to add some standout parts to the flat areas and made sure the whole thing wasn't shrouded in ice. I ended up doing a lot of spikes in the end, so much that I had to expand the top part slightly, just because a bigger ice spike topping the whole thing would just look stupid. We're not building the Fortress of Solitude, are we? That top part was mostly pyramid shaped and given a small shadow crystal in the middle to fit in with something I was starting to do with the bonus parts as mild improvements. After the build, I embedded it in with a pack of ice spikes, and after blending it in with the rest of the biome, it was given a traversable interior, ending with placing a key inside the monument's treasure room. Other than that, there's not that much. After finishing, I had a look at the build in the dark, and, well, I don't mean to brag, but aesthetically, this is probably my favourite build since the mansion. A lot more simpler, but I like how it looks. Right, so now we have one more board left to do, and it's not one that's part of the main game. Board 3 is playable in the original game in the S-Rank room after the TV World section of the chapter, but the main board was cut due to pacing concerns from Toby. This leaves this board's existence in an odd position. On the wiki, there's a map of the original board as well as the description of how the story would have gone if it were in the game. But I also didn't want to build a whole city for the area since, well, it doesn't exist. So how do you reimagine cut content from a game in Minecraft? Well, the answer wasn't clear when I built this, but I tried. I chose a small village near the ice spike biome where we were before to contain this last board. My intention with the boards was ultimately to fragment the biomes that went into the TV world, so the last one was always going to be in the tundra, because we had Badlands first and then Island, so yeah, it made sense. The emphasis of the original board would have been on quizzes, so I scattered a series of questions across the igloos of the village. They range from stuff ripped from the actual game to just general knowledge about my videos. Not all of them are mandatory, seriously, there are some in there I'd rather you not answer, nor do you really need to get all of them right. Part of the diamond aesthetic was using a pickaxe to collect the obsidian for every question and just get the answers afterwards, since the main board was meant to have you collect cues to get into the main tower of the city. Instead of a tower, I added an antenna to a nearby igloo, which is where you put the obsidian, leading you into a clone of the TV studio where you are rewarded with a diamond. However, I'm not forgetting about the city board's purpose in the actual game, to complete the sword route and give the player the shadow mantle. How was I going to do that? The better question is, why obsidian for the questions, There was another structure nearby this village which I took advantage of, that being the ruined portal. Yes, if the dimension structure of this map wasn't already too hard to navigate, we're bringing the Nether into this mess. Have I even built anything significant in the Nether before? This Nether section will encapsulate the manhole dungeon mixed with the doom board that comes about when Tenna is having a meltdown. Luckily for me, there was an open space near where the portal came out that I could use to encapsulate this part. I blended together a few existing assets to put emphasis on the board's destroyed nature, like the bridge to the bunker that's in Hometown where you jump off onto the main part of the board. However, the main end of the area wasn't going to be the bunker. No, I had something else in mind. A dark ruined version of Undertale's ruins, hear me out, copied over from an older version of the Undertale project, where the bunker at the end would be a dark version of Toriel's house, also from the old project. I built that one 4 years ago, so it's not perfect, but it's something. For decoration, I led a black stone path around the scattered buildings and running some streams of lava through the ground. Later on, I also placed some crimson trees to really drive home the ruined city board / hometown vibe I was going for, and I think I succeeded at that well enough. Inside the house was going to be the mantle holder arena. I also cloned the interior of that iteration of the house. All I needed to do here was use pale wood to make it more monochrome, think that scene from Dune. Then I placed a few crystals for decoration and an exit back into the TV world where you can gain the mantle, rounding off our boards. This would normally be the part where I do a cinematic to round off the video, but I didn't do that here because 1, I have less confidence in YouTube's copyright system to let me use the game's soundtrack without getting claimed, and 2, there's not really too much here to make a cinematic out of. I thought about whether it would have been beneficial to just tack this onto the end of the last video and release. I do think it would have improved things, so while I was happy with everything here, I knew I couldn't leave it at just the boards. I needed to do one more thing for this video. So I'm doing a few improvements, just as a little treat. A small one was adding crystals to all the secret boss areas to give them some consistency. A bigger one was adding all the TV world extensions to Castletown. The first part of that was expanding Ralsei's castle, so I cleared the upper parts of the main tower in a way that could fit in the new areas, mainly Tenna's room. This went above the first set of rooms from Chapter 2, but taking up most of the floor, while the part above it was non-specific in its reference and mainly served as an interlude between that part and Ralsei's room on the top floor. I styled Tenna's room similarly to the TV world's green room, and the above floor with a bunch of foliage, with a staircase going up to an empty room, with a single copper lantern making up Ralsei's room. For Queen's room, I built this in one of the side towers across 2 floors. The top had all the expected decorations like the boombox and stuff, but the bottom was all road, even extending to the outside parts for extra effect, which I also scattered warped trees around to account for Lance's extensions for this chapter. The other and last major improvement was the TV studio. Similar to the previous editions, I built this up the side of the mountain, opposite to the Chapter 2 stuff. To connect this up to the TV world, I cloned the door to the Card Kingdom and placed it on the cliff I made, connecting a part of it to the below town, which you can unlock by going through the TV world door. The studio went up next to it, though I'm not going to show too much of it to encourage you to check it out yourself. But that's basically it for this part. It feels so good to finally be done with Chapter 3 proper and not have any loose ends dangling over, despite having it hang over me for months. You can download it in the description, and provided Chapter 5 doesn't release that soon, we only have one more chapter left to cover for the time being. Although this might age horribly if the Nintendo Direct announces Chapter 5. And now, the moment none of you have been waiting for, the game I was needle-dropping for the first half of the video before forgetting about it towards the end was Expedition 33. No, this wasn't me playing in on the meme, this was a secret plug that fit in alright with the video. For my new second channel, Dark Herald, I will now hand over the remainder of this video to the channel's mascot, PNG Tuber Harold, for more info. Thank you, regular Minecraft Fool Harold. Yes, after teasing it for months, I am stepping out of the confines of Minecraft to bring you a new experience. Well, to you guys, probably. This side channel will be home to videos discussing just anything I want to, mostly video games because I want to contribute an alternative, more thoughtful way of talking about games on this site. The big one I'm working on is a retrospective of Expedition 33, last year's Game of the Year winner. I'm aiming for a July release, but the script is like 8,000 words long so far, so I can't guarantee it. I have a video on Highguard, I have a video on Mixtape if this video goes out at the right time. I'm planning a video on if you know what that is, that's a sign that this channel is a bit more R-rated than this one. I mean, what did you expect from a channel named like this? And yes, that deltarune escapism video I pulled last year is still coming. I'm mostly doing this to get a format and some familiarity going before tackling a video that deep, you know. Considering that's a video and topic I'm really passionate about, I would prefer to get my feet wet first so I know for certain I won't mess it up. I hope you guys understand. I just don't want to make a mess out of a video like that. But yeah, that's about it. Sorry if this video is more messy than others in the series. Obviously, content has been a bit screwed up around building Chapter 3, and I have had to manage things I want to do to fit in with my studies. And because of that, for the time being, Chapter 4 is projected to be the last Minecraft video I make for a good while, as I'll need to put full focus into university come autumn. Another reason why I'm going to try and push Dark Herald more, so I'm not stressing over this Minecraft content too much, while also trying to get a degree and possibly employment. I'll link it in the description if you want to check it out, but apart from that, yeah, I'll see you in the next one.